This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.
Welcome back to the Oddball Aussie podcast. I'm your host, Oz Oddball. Thank you for joining me. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking about Irish cryptids, mythology, folklore, what have you. It's all about the Irish today. And that is because my Irish listeners got me into the top, I think we end up in the about 67th, 66th so far. Most listened to documentary podcast in Ireland. So thank you all that listen, and thank you everyone who really contributes and makes this such a great show to do. Before we begin, make sure you follow me on Twitter, and that's the Aussie. That's at Aussie Oddball rather, and that's the same on Instagram. You can also follow me on Facebook, the Oddball Aussie Podcast. If you want to contribute and buy something from the store, that's the T Public Store, the Oddball Aussie Podcast. And really, I want to get some new listener stories. I've got a few ready to go. I'm going to start doing a whole new show just on listener stories. So send them to the Oddball Aussie at hotmail.com. That's the Oddball Aussie at hotmail.com. And you can also send them on the Twitter as well. I'm very responsive there. Alrighty, I think that does about everything. Also, make sure you check out the Straight Up Strange Productions network that I am a part of. And jump in there and enjoy the stuff that we're working on, because it's there's some really good podcasts over there, and enough podcasts to fill your whole week, and you don't have to worry about listening to anyone else. So it's a great group anyway. So I hope you all enjoy that as well. Alrighty, so we're doing something a little bit different tonight. I'm recording this also for YouTube. We've got the YouTube channel going, so definitely go over and check out the YouTube channel, the Oddball Aussie Podcast. So far, I've just got a couple of gaming streams up there, and I've got a couple of what else got up there? A couple of gaming streams, and the Oddball news as well is over there. So definitely get over there, subscribe, hit your notifications, all that. And if you're already on there listening to it now, thank you, and put some hopefully nice comments in the comment section there. But definitely those likes and the notifications, and the and sharing it out is really what's going to help this podcast grow on the YouTube side of things. So I hope you've all been doing well. I'm really enjoying expanding this show a little bit further, and really enjoying all the feedback I've been getting from a lot of you. And the one thing, as I said before, I really want to work on is those listener stories, because I think they could really be something big. We could really go somewhere with them. And so many people are screaming out for them, but they don't have stories of their own. But they do want other people's stories. So definitely send them in. As I said, we're looking at the Irish folklore and Irish stories, cryptids and all sorts of creatures that are coming out of Ireland, been reported for since the medieval times. There's everything from back then till up until today. People are still seeing all of this stuff, and a lot of stuff is things that we've already discussed in the past. A couple of names will pop up that you'll be like, that was in that story a couple of years back. So if you're a regular listener to the show. But there's also a lot of different ones. And honestly, I could have done 3 or 4 episodes just on Ireland. There is so much folklore there, and it's amazing. I will come back to doing some more, because some of these that I'm going to go through today, we're just doing a brief overview of them. Some of them I could probably do a whole show on because of their sightings and their interest that people have had in them, even in more modern times. So where do we get all this folklore from? Well, the Gaelic traditions of Ireland really had a great side for telling stories. There's an amazing storyteller culture within the Irish communities. And I think when you look at it, that's what really transferred over into the American cities, places like Boston and stuff like that. where we saw these great stories really continue on overseas. Even here in Australia, we saw a lot of folklore come from Irish convicts and also Irish settlers. That because we weren't all convicts, there were settlers that came along as well eventually. Yeah, there's just some great Irish stories. I mean, well, seriously, Australia, one of the best known Irish stories was Ned Kelly. And Ned Kelly became a folklore of his own in many rights. There's so many stories about Ned Kelly that probably aren't true, but it's still interesting to look into. Might do a whole history episode on Ned Kelly one day, if anyone's interested in that. All right, so where do we start? Well, leprechauns. Leprechauns seem to be where everyone sort of starts. Leprechauns are the main sort of I don't know, folklore that everyone goes to, and I guess that's got a lot to do with the it's got a lot to do with how we've all been brought into the culture of Ireland. A lot to do with St. Paddy's Day. A lot of people do see that and go leprechauns. We know we know all about leprechauns because of that. But we're just going to quickly cover leprechauns and move on to some others because I think people know well enough about them. But you probably heard the leprechaun, but did you know that he is an Irish mythological creature? Before becoming a mascot for St. Paddy's Day and all other things Irish, he was a shoe cobbler. Many people dress up as him on St. Paddy's Day with the red beard and the green top hat. Often seen as a symbol of luck, the leprechaun collects gold and hides it at the end of his rainbow. If you see him, he must grant you 3 wishes before he can be released. However, use these wishes wisely. He may try to trick you. One story tells of a man who captured a leprechaun and wished to be taken to the gold. The leprechaun showed the man the tree under which the gold was hidden, but the man did not have a shovel to uncover the treasure. He set the leprechaun free and then marked the tree with his garter so he could go to get a shovel. However, when he returned, he found that every tree in the area had an identical garter tied to it. The moral of the story is get-rich-quick schemes never work. So, interesting thing about leprechaun is, it's sort of a monkey's paw. So everything you wish for has a bad effect. In many ways. So it's definitely something that many people see as sort of the anti-genie. So in many ways, a leprechaun in Fae lore would be seen almost like a djinn, almost like a genie, but slight differences. And the leprechaun have their own little world that they jump between our world and theirs. And almost a different dimension or a different reality, possibly. And the Fae lore of the leprechaun is quite interesting. And once again, something we might go right down that leprechaun over the leprechaun's rainbow or down the leprechaun's hole. I don't want to say down the leprechaun's hole because that sounds terrible. but yeah, we might look at doing what that realm and that dimensional stuff with the leprechauns are in the future. So here's one that we have seen in Australia. We definitely know that people have seen these in Australia and all around the world, but we sometimes refer to them as white women, white ladies. They're also separated. This is the banshee. So the banshee in many cultures became the white lady, which is the lady on the side of the road who, if you pick them up, you'll end up in a car accident, things like that. They're a spirit. But the banshee story is the oldest story. This is where it came from. So the banshee is a omen of death, and really used for a lot of I wouldn't say bedtime stories, but a lot of moral stories for children. The sighting or the sound of this ominous character's cry is a prediction of the death. King James I of Scotland was said to have been confronted by a banshee shortly before he passed away. Her appearance comes in a number of guises, so she can appear as a young woman, a matron, a withered hag, but always in a white cloak. In different cultures, we see different spirits, but who still carry the same sort of thing. So the harpy, which is the creature that's half half bird, half human, is a Falor type creature, and it's gets a lot of inspiration from the Banshee stories as well, in the screech and the scream. But the Banshee itself can appear as a crow, a weasel, or a stoat in the witchcraft sense. However, the story behind the Banshee is not a callous one, and it traces back to the 8th century. The tradition was that some women took on the role of a keener at funerals, where they sang sad songs called the Coenade. Sorry if I'm butchering these words, by the way. Coenade, the Irish word for crying at the graveside. The best keeners attended the funerals of the affluent and well-known people, and were all paid by wealthy families. Many powerful families referred to the keeners as a bean seed, as a fairy woman. Fairies being a much talented singer than a human. This is where the name Banshee originated. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? I find that to be a pretty cool story. The interesting thing with this is that the Banshee's story does twist and turn as it goes along. It's definitely one that doesn't always stay the same. So how about this next one? The Puka. The Puka, sounds like a Pokemon, is the most feared type of Irish fairy. They are violent tricksters who emerge only at night. They normally take the form of a black horse, stampeding and trampling through fences, properties, and crops. If chickens and cows see a puka, they will be traumatized and won't produce eggs or milk for weeks. And a lot of the crops that the puka run through have said to have died or withered, or do not produce any yield from the crop at all. So this has been a very interesting one, because this has actually been seen in modern times. There have been farmers who have said their whole crops have been destroyed by the puka, and they take many different forms. But the most reported one has been that of the horse. In County Wexford, pukas are said to take the form of large dark eagles. In Laos, puka take the form of a terrifying boogeyman character. So they're shapeshifters in many ways, and many of the Irish folklore does have shapeshifting and trickery in it. Whether this is a fallback from many of the ancient cultures, I'm not too sure. So pukas are shapeshifters. While they take the form of a horse to wreak nighttime destruction, they'll take the form of a goblin to claim a share of the harvest. Farmers would often leave a share of their harvest in their fields as the pukas share in an attempt to appease them. So it'd be interesting. So I'm guessing they would, maybe they are a goblin type creature. And when they are, when they want to get some money out of you, some gold out of you, they turn into these horses to trample your fields and all that. So maybe it got to a point where people were saying, well, we leave this gold, we leave this alcohol, this tobacco for the goblins, so that they won't do it. Almost, holding them to ransom. I could see trolls doing that. So pukas are said to have mastered human speech. So they will call to their victims' names from outside their house. If the person emerges, they are dragged away by the puka. If no one comes outside, the puka will vandalize the property. Many believe the Puck from Shakespeare's A Midsummer's Night Dream was based on a puka. The similarities is the name and the Puck's mischievous behavior certainly support this theory. So there's a lot of Falor in Irish culture. Now here's one that we all know too well, because I did a whole show on this. The mermaids, or as they call them, the merrow. So the merrow comes from the Irish words muir, M-U-I-R, meaning sea, and oi, meaning maid. That's spelled O-I-G-H, or merrow, row. I'm still getting my head around this Gaelic. Merrow men are hideously ugly male sea creatures, as seen on the picture on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Whereas the female species of merrows are strikingly beautiful. They are not to be confused with mermaids, as they have human legs instead of a tail. As you can see, so I'll put this picture up on Twitter as well. But the merrow so from their legs down, they have the scales. They've been seen to have the scales, and they've got the big webbed feet. So when their legs are together, they appear to look like a giant long tail, but in actual fact, they are more like a almost like pterodactyl's feet, I guess, like giant scaly feet. I'm trying to. It's almost like if fish had legs, I guess, but they're quite vile looking anyway. So some say their abilities come from a red feathered cap, while others claim it comes from a sealskin cap. They are known to be wearing garments that provide them with powers. Either way, for her to walk on the land, she must abandon her cap or cape. If a man finds and hides these garments, the Merrow is forced to become his wife, and she cannot return to the ocean. Merrows are desirable brides with their extreme beauty and riches collected from the ocean floor. However, as soon as she finds the garments again, she is overwhelmed by the urge to return to the sea and will leave her husband and children. So there's a lot of families actually who say they're descended from Merrows who were entrapped by fishermen. Now the interesting thing about all this is they talk about they were great wives to have because they were extremely beautiful and extremely rich. The one little thing I don't think they thought about though was where are all their treasures? They're in the ocean. And you're never going to get them unless she goes back into the ocean. She can't go back in the ocean unless you give her a cap back. I don't know. Maybe it's a loophole. I'm not too sure. But well, a lot of people do believe these mermaids exist. How about the Kelpie? Now, yes, you would have heard the Kelpie and another one of my shows in the past where we discussed different water creatures and different things like that. I do love a good sea monster or lake monster. So the Kelpies are evil water spirits. They haunt rivers and lakes. They look like foals or horses, and they always are soaking wet. They always look cute and like the type of animal you want to go up and pat. They appear in certain ways to certain people. So for children, they'll be these big-eyed, disheveled-looking pony type things, and they're trying to get the child to get on their back. For an adult, it might be a beautiful steed or a beautiful mare that it entices the person to want to ride. Once the rider is on their back, however, the Kelpie skin becomes adhesive and traps its victim. The Kelpie then rides into the water, drowning their victim. They eat the victim, living only on the heart and liver. Kelpies have been known to appear as incredibly handsome men and less commonly beautiful women. So when we did this, we talked about the Kelpie, and many stories were around the Middle Ages and even more recently into the early 1900s. There were stories of women being taken away by these Kelpies who were shapeshifted into attractive men who would play an instrument. And essentially, the women would lay with these Kelpies and then disappear, never to be seen ever again. And the husband would be left saying, look, she cheated on me with this amazing looking man, but she never came back, which led to a lot of people to believe either one or two things. Either the husband, in a jealous fit of rage, had killed the two of them and it had never actually happened, or that the husband was trying to cover up because the husband was embarrassed that he had been cheated on. So it's a lot of different sort of sides to that story there. And but it has been in reverse as well, where not as often, but it has been in reverse where men have been taken, have disappeared with a female Kelpie. So then we have changelings. So anyone who plays the Witcher would have seen a little creature like the one that you see on the screen if you're on YouTube. So the changelings I don't know. It's pretty messed up. It's a child who's been replaced. So it's a child that has been replaced by fairies, and they've stolen the original child. The fairies have always been known to be people who like to steal children from people. This could be either a fairy's baby, an elderly fairy in disguise, or an object made to look like an infant by fairy magic. Fairy births were said to often result in deformation. That's deformation, not defamation. As adult fairies obsessed with beauty, they will try to swap their child with a human baby. Apparently, fairy children are extremely ugly. Changelings all have old, wrinkled yellow skin and screech all day and night. They feed on good fortune and find joy in disaster striking at their adopted family. Truly any parent's nightmare. So as they grow, they become more powerful in drawing in people's energy. So essentially, they're leeching off people. They can cause anyone who hears them to become entranced. So when they're making these screeching sounds, there'll be people who won't even notice they're screeching. They'll just believe, oh, it's such a beautiful little song it's singing, and they'll become entrapped. And during this, they'll essentially just drain the whole family until the family are dead. Then it's believed that the fairy family will come back, retrieve them, and then move on to the next family who they'll swap it out with. Or at this point, the changeling has become strong enough to go about on its own way, and it would then possibly, in some beliefs, they go on to become something else. So maybe they go on to become something like a kelpie, or maybe they go on to become something like a puka. But there's also a lot of talk of they just go back to the Fey world, back to that other dimension, that other reality, essentially, which apparently exists like a mirror of her own. That's what I've been reading about. Been reading a fair bit of Joshua Cutchin's stuff lately. He's always had great storytelling ability and a great way of going through the history and the lore of Fae and fairy lore. So definitely check out Joshua Cutchin's stuff. So then we move on to this very attractive creature, the Far-Darig. The Far-Darig is the leprechaun's evil twin. Yeah. Leprechauns are sort of shitheads at the best of times, but this is the think you got Green Lantern. This is like the Yellow Lantern, or you've got this is like Superman if he's been affected by red kryptonite. Just becomes a dick. You know, goes out and blows out the Olympic torch and name that movie. Their name translates to Red Man, which is apt as they wear a red cape and hat. They are gruesome practical jokers and carry a human-sized burlap sack ready to kidnap people with. They trap their victims in a room and use their ventriloquist skills to project human voices or inhuman voices around their victims. Their most terrifying noise is the laugh of a dead man. And that's the thing, we don't know what that sounds like. What does the laugh of a dead man sound like? Far-Darigs have also been connected to stealing of human babies. So these are the little shits that replace the babies. These are the ones that do the deed. They actually work for the fairies and replace the children with the changelings. So you can thank these little assholes. They're associated with nightmares and they love the feeling of terror. So maybe changelings grow into these. There are stories of Far-Darigs luring men to their houses and ordering them to cook dinner, only to find that dinner is a skewered hag cooking over a fire. There is one surefire way to avoid being subject to the Far-Darigs' tricks. You must say you will not mock me before you are trapped. This, however, is much harder than it sounds, as Far-Darigs set well-hidden traps. Just little assholes, aren't they? So we're going through sort of a rough top 10 of the most well-known ones, and we'll get into a few of the ones that I've picked out here in a minute. So then we've got the Fear-Gorta. The Fear-Gorta appear as walking corpses. So essentially these are the Irish folklore's version of ghouls or zombies. So they have bluish skin, rotting flesh, and they're said to be controlled by a not so much a witch doctor character, but they're definitely controlled by a head ghoul, by a head of the Fear-Gorta. And they definitely have this shambling appearance. They wander. So there is a story stating that the Fiagorta is a cursed patch of grass above a grave, and anyone who steps on it is cursed with eternal hunger. If this hunger is not met with food, the person will die. So essentially, these people become become these things because they step on a grave. They also say that those who give the Fiagorta food are rewarded with lifelong wealth and prosperity. Those who don't suffer bad luck and poverty. Maybe a moral story that's all about sharing. Sharing is caring, after all. But if a zombie came up and banged on your door, would you be like, "Hey, you want some food, buddy? You want me to go get you a burger?" But I don't know. No, these aren't the brain-eating types. They're much more of a greed type creature. They're much more of a needs to consume just food. So you'd think they'd be a bit fatter than that, wouldn't you? Not just shambling skin and bones. But I guess essentially the idea is that they become so obsessed with the food that they eventually become these. They die and their soul is just keeping them alive to consume. But is that not what we've become nowadays with consumerism? I don't know. One thing to think about. So you got the Dullahan now. So the Dullahan is the Irish story of the Headless Horseman. The Headless Horseman appears all over Europe. These stories range in so many different ways. A few different ones here with the Irish version. Wears a black cape. In his left hand, though, he holds a human spine as a whip, and in the right hand he holds his grinning head. So they normally do hold their head, but the human spine as a whip is an interesting one. The Dullahan rides it to the area in which the death will take place and calls the name of the soon-to-be deceased. The story goes, if you see a still Dullahan, someone in the area will die imminently. The Dullahan holds his head up high and in any direction in order to observe death. Dullahans do not look kindly on onlookers. They will catch you and they will blind you in one eye using their whip or cover you in blood. I don't know. I think I would prefer just cover me in blood. Don't take my eye. There's been so many reports of these things, and even in modern days, people have seen headless horsemen or a spirit of a headless horseman through many forests in Ireland, and it's quite an interesting thing. People have seen them on sides of mountains, and then a lot of people have said that after seeing it, something has happened to their family members, or they've come down with some sort of an illness, not necessarily death, but they have definitely gotten sick from seeing these things. Now, to close out before we go on to some other ones, we got the Arbatak. Now, the Arbatak is the Irish version of a vampire. Now, look at that terrifying. Fucker. There was once a magical Irish tyrant who enforced cruel laws on his people and was also cruel physically. Thankfully, he was killed and buried standing up. However, the relief was not long lasting. The next day, the dwarf emerged from the grave using his magical powers, more cruel and vicious than ever. The Arbatak has been known to drink the blood of his victims, and some say that he is the inspiration behind Dracula. There is only one way to stop the Arbatak. You must kill him and bury him upside down. So, I mean, it's definitely the similar sort of story. There's no talk of garlic, and I could not find any references to stabbing them with a stake through the heart. It's this very interesting, you've got to kill them like you would a normal person, but then you've got to bury them upside down. Very ritualistic, and you probably find, I'd say, if you would excavate certain church grounds, you'd probably find people buried upside down who they believed were Arbatak. I mean, medical science, especially back in medieval times, wasn't exactly amazing. So potentially people might have been not quite dead, come back a bit, like woke up a bit, and then they've gone, zombie! Knock them on the head and then bury them upside down. Maybe. All right. So now we're going to go on to where are we up to? The puka. So we're going to go on to the puka now. Now, though, this is a different puka. This is Puca. Same belief. They believe it's the same creature, except this one they tend to believe it's a what would you say? More like a gremlin looking thing than anything. So we'll try to bring it up here. Yeah, so the puka. Now, the puka is, once again, still Irish folklore. It can considered to be bringers both of good and bad fortune. They could either help or hinder rural and marine communities. The creatures were said to be shape changers, which could take the appearance of black horses, goats, and rabbits. The one we're seeing that we're looking at the moment, these are the they sort of take on this monkey sort of this figure, this little troll monkey figure. The origin may have been from Old Norse terms, puk or puki, which refers to nature spirits. In Germanic languages such as Frisian or English, this became pusul, puk, or puck. And it's exactly what they are. They're the manifestation of a nature spirit. And this differs from the puka goblin shapeshifter who turns into a horse to wreck fields. They're not necessarily doing it for they're not really doing it for money, or they're not doing it for just to be pricks. A lot of them are they will come out and they will attack people, or they will go after people, or they'll try to scare people off the land. But essentially, they're actually trying to warn people away. They're trying to look after the land. And there's been many people who have built houses in certain regional areas in Ireland who have said that they've found tracks of what could be a small monkey-like creature around the outside of the house. And then they'd find they would find like what was it, like bags of grain and stuff torn open. And spilt everywhere, and even though they never actually had grain bags on their land, they're going, "Where's all this? Where's a bag of grain coming from? A random bag of grain on my back step? It's just torn open." And it seems like they try these little bullying tactics to get people off their land. So the fuka is represented as being helpful to farmers by Lady Wilde, who relates the following tale. A farmer's son named Fedrag one day noticed the invisible presence of the Fuka brushing by and called out to him, offering a coat. The Fuka appeared in the guise of a young bull and told him to come to the old mill at night. From that time onward, the Fukas came secretly at night and performed all the work of the milling sacks of corn into flour. So there's been these stories that they will come and they will help families out. But if they aren't happy with you, if you've done the wrong thing, that's when they'll start to mess with you. So maybe the reports where people have found these very agricultural type of signs being left behind, whether good or bad, might be an indication of whether the puka or the fuka wants you to be there. So they've also been associated with the eating of human beings, which is, it's sort of frowned upon. People don't really like when you eat them. It's, one of those things. So then we've also got the Lafrey monster. I think I got that one right. Lafrey monster. The Lafrey monster is a sea serpent. So this is Ireland's version of Loch Ness. So on May 18th, 1960, Father Richard Quigley, Father Matthew Burke, and Father Daniel Murray were enjoying a peaceful day of fishing on the shores of the Lafrey outside Athlone Island, when one of the men noticed an unusual object roughly 100 yards away. According to the men, the creature's length from the end of the coil to its head was 6 feet and roughly 18 inches. At the head of the neck appeared out of the water. The head and the neck were narrow in comparison to the thickness of a good-sized salmon, and it received its propulsion from a source they could not see under the water. The testimony of these were three clergymen was more than enough to give credibility to the existence of the Lafrey monster, and local newspapers soon picked up on the story. Got to remember, back in these days, for a clergyman to come out like that and say things like that, it was like one of our politicians now coming out and saying that. Oh, no, I don't know, because there's a lot of politicians that don't have that much respect. So it's essentially, it was like a very, very highly respected person coming out and saying something that they saw was weird. I mean, it could have been that the three fathers were sitting around on the shore fishing, and they'd gotten into a few too many of the brewskis, maybe a bit of the red wine. You never know. There were two sections above the water. A forward section of uniform girth stretching quite straight out of the water and inclined at the plane of the surface at about 30 degrees. In length about 18 to 24 inches. The diameter of his long neck leading section would estimate to be about 4 inches. At its extremity, which we took to be a serpent-like head, it tapered rather abruptly to a point. So think of like a poisonous snake. They've got the more narrower faces. Between the leading and following sections of this creature, there intervened about 2 feet of water. The second section seemed to us to be a tight, roughly semicircular loop. This portion could have been a hump or a large knob on the back of a large body under the surface that was being propelled by flippers. As to the dimensions of this section, if a loop, we should say the girth of a large 15-pound salmon. If, however, a round hump, we should put its base at about 18 inches. He would estimate the overall length to the two visible sections, measured along the surface from tip to snout to end of hump at about 6 feet. The movement along the water was steady. There was no apparent disturbance of the surface, so that propulsion seemed to come from a well-submerged portion of the creature. There was no undulation of its body above the water. It was cruising at a very leisurely speed, and was apparently unconcerned about our presence. We watched it moving along the surface for a period of about 2 or 3 minutes in a northeasterly direction. It was going towards the shore. Then it submerged gradually rather than dived and disappeared from view completely. Another couple of minutes later, it reappeared, still following the same course. It reached about 30 yards offshore, where it submerged, and we never saw it again. Although many other folk have also spotted the Lafrey monster. Now, that's quite an interesting story, and I really do hope they saw something. I really do hope this was a genuine thing that they spotted. Later on, I mean, fairly recently, I believe, 2013, a school group, were out filming a short movie for a class project at La Foyle, a large tidal estuary in County Donegal, Ireland, when they noticed something very strange in the water in front of them. Looks like we have our own Loch Ness monster, Conal Malarkey, a student at Northwest Regional College in Derry, Ireland, wrote when he posted his video on YouTube. I have absolutely no idea what it is, but it looked amazing. Malarkey wrote, the shaky 59-second video shows a dark object of indeterminate size moving slowly along the surface of La Foyle before diving or sinking slowly beneath the waves. Some observers have speculated the object could be a large fish, a whale, a dolphin, or some marine animal. La Foyle is open to the North Atlantic. Besides the infamous Loch Ness Monster of Scotland, reports of large lake-dwelling creatures have come from other parts of the world, including the mysterious devil of Lake Labnica in Siberia. So there's definitely been a lot of sightings of these lake monsters, sea creatures, things of that nature. So the uploader claims the video was taken in La Foyle, but there's been a little bit of discrepancy here. In the background is clearly that of Howth, about 130 miles or 209 kilometers away from La Foyle, according to the paper that researched this. When viewed at high definitions, there are several tethering cables seen off the second boat, which raises further questions that was this done as a joke? did this school group make this thing in order to sort of, get a bit of self-promotion, I guess, in many ways. It's hard to say. A lot of people love faking things like this because they love to get that, that that quick clickbait. It's so much easier to fake things, and even if it turns out to be fake, you can go, see, I was just trying to fool you all. I mean, seriously, look at TikTok. There's so much crap on TikTok nowadays. You can't really, take anything seriously or believe anything. It's getting that bad. But so the monster of Lothry. It's definitely one that people are still looking for, and definitely one that people still think exists. Now, we move on to this darling little creature, the Gruagach. Now, the Gruagach is what I would say is possibly the Irish version of a Sasquatch or a Sasquatch family creature. According to Nick Redfern's The Bigfoot book, the Encyclopedia of Sasquatch, Yeti, and Cryptid Primates, there is an Irish word, Gruagach, which can mean magician, giant, or ogre, but actually means the hairy one. Within various medieval literature detailing history and folklore throughout Europe, one who looks hard enough won't have to struggle to find references to hairy, man-like beasts, variously referred to as orcs, ogres, trolls, woodwoses, and wild men. We just did a show on wild men last week. In various documents from England and surrounding countries, Nick Redfern proposed the Gruagach of Irish lore is a Bigfoot or similar wild man. Now, last week we did a show all about wild men, part one of it. There's going to be more coming out of it with that. And this definitely fits that book. And it's funny, this didn't come up when I was doing my research for that. But the Gruagach is a humanoid-like figure, lanky in shape and stature, and has been looked at reported in many different sizes and shapes. So there's been a lot of people who have reported it as a tall, muscular creature, over 6 foot, maybe 7 to 8 foot. And then others have reported to be a small creature the size of a monkey. Others have said it's a human-sized creature that just lives in the trees and lives in the forest. And just as there are multiple sightings of its size, there's multiple beliefs of what it is as well. Many people believing it's a spiritual type creature, an earth type creature, earth spirit, sort of like the Fuka. And then there's many others who say, no, it's a blood and bones wild man living out in the woods. Many other people believe that it is a crossbreed between human and whatever Sasquatchian type creature is found in Ireland. Or maybe it's a fallback from something very ancient that lives for a very, very long time. There's so many different stories and so many different beliefs surrounding this creature, and there's been sightings of it from there were Vikings that saw these things. These go all the way back to I believe that there were shipping lanes that people came through from England and from Europe, and they said they saw them too in the medieval times, all the way up until 2016, and even more recently as 2 years ago, 2019. People have seen them, and there's a picture that we'll put up in a second of someone who's photographed one. Whether or not it's real, whether it's been faked, it's a fairly believable picture. I wonder though why I could not find a video on it. Maybe there is a video out there somewhere. I'll do some further research, and if I do find the video, it will go up on the Twitter page. They believe that they are once again just as many sizes and many beliefs as to what these things are. There's also many beliefs as to what their diet is made up of. Many people saying that they live on the deer and they live on a carnivorous diet. Then others saying no, they might attack people, but they actually live on fruit, berries, and leaves. Many people saying they have the similar sort of similar sort of diet as, say, a cow, even living off grasses and leaves. So there's my dog barking in the background. Maybe it's seeing a Gruachan out there, Gruagach out there. But at the end of the day, so many people have seen different things. So in January of 2016, a mother and Irish Bigfoot researcher, Maxine Caulfield, was walking her dogs in the Slivenora forest, placed but believed by some to be haunted, when her dogs started acting strangely, which had happened on other occasions during her research. It was not until she got home and posted her pictures from the forest online that people noticed the strange figure in it, which her and some others who saw the picture online compared it to the Gurugach, which Maxine was looking for at the time. So, I mean, that story, when you see this picture, you'll be like, this isn't one of those photos you sit down and go, oh, look, what's there? No, you would have seen this fairly early, I think, but saying that, maybe not. So ghost stories from this forest have been told since October 1942, when a US Air Force B-17 Flying Fortress bomber crashed into a mountain in the area, killing 8 of the 10 people in the plane. The photo appears to be similar to a ghillie suit, though its arms appear to be a branch, which could be explained by the creature holding the branch, while its hand is covered by its fur, or the sleeve of a suit, or it's walking past a branch when the photo was taken. However, despite the photo likely being a hoax or misidentification, another alleged sighting in the area adds some credence to it. Around 4:30 in the evening on the 14th of July 2017, a wildlife photographer and her husband went out to the Slivenora forest, Northern Ireland. She says it was raining very heavily and they were walking their usual routes when they heard a strange howling noise. They hadn't went far into the woods when her German Shepherd started barking at the noise. That's my German Shepherd barking in the background as well. This is getting really strange. At that point, the howl sounded quite close, but they couldn't find the source of the noise. A few seconds later, the noise stopped, then started again. This happened 4 times. She says she had heard the noise before in the same area of the forest, but she was alone with the dog, so she doubted herself a bit. She told researcher Deborah Hatswell she intended on going back there without the dog to see if she'd still hear it. She reported to the same researcher that on the 17th of July 2017, she returned to the area with her phone, but she didn't hear anything. She brought her partner's small dog, Barney, with her, and he stopped randomly near where she says she found a double X made from large tree trunks. It was worth noting that in other parts of the world, field research allege that Bigfoot habitats, this is why they mark things. So a lot of people say that Bigfoot uses signs made out of wood or sticks or trees or leaves to mark where you're not supposed to go, or mark certain things for other creatures. Maybe. So the dog just stood there sniffing with the wind with his ears up and one paw off the ground, as if he had smelt something. Later on, her partner and her both got the feeling that they were being watched. After the dog started doing the same thing again, she also says that while it may be unrelated, she lost the dog's ball in the area and looked for a long time without finding it, before going back the next day and finding it laying in the middle of the trail. She says she will go back again until she finds something to prove her story. However, no more information has been given and nothing else has been reported in that forest, though there are 2 nearby forests where things have been reported. Dunluce and Ballyboily in Tipperary Island. Now, Tipperary is going to come up very soon after this one. There's historical accounts of a wolf man there. So, all modern sightings of hairy humanoid describe ape-like creatures, which can make howling noises, except for a select few in South Island in the Republic in 1997. 2 men claimed they were the allegedly haunted Ballyboily forest when they heard that what they called a loud flapping sound. They thought nothing of it and continued walking until they heard strange noises such as a woman moaning in pain. They were horrified to find a group of trees thickly smeared with blood. As they ran off, one of the men claims he saw 4 dark humanoid figures standing behind them, but not chasing them, where only a few seconds earlier nothing had been. Other reports from the area describe druid rituals where animals are burned to death. The campfires and tipi-shaped trees structures can be found in the forest, though the tree structures are are more common. A year later, a 63-year-old woman who was working as a pet sitter and her husband were walking some local dogs in Ballyboli. They approached a small patch of dead trees one day and claimed they saw what they thought was a human crouched down in the bushes. Agitating the dogs, the creature raised its head, showing it was not human. The woman says her husband approached the creature, who was growled at. When he came too close, she told him to step back. He thought it was an escaped chimpanzee at the time, until he got within 15 feet and they noticed it was a tall figure. Stood up on its hind legs, they noticed the large creature was carrying an also large stick. The creature smashed its stick against a tree, then ran off at a high speed. The whole thing lasted for about 4 minutes. She described this creature as having a chimpanzee-like face, but with a broader nose. It was covered in dark brown-black fur and was 8 foot tall. Later that year, a man claimed to have seen an ape-like creature using improvised eating utensils. The report came 1 week after a man claimed to have seen a similar creature in Suffolk, England. There are many Facebook groups about the Gurgach, such as the IBRO, the Irish Bigfoot Research Organisation, and the IWRO, the Irish Wildman Research Organisation. Despite most sightings being in the north, both of these groups are based in South Island. One, however, is based near Ballyboli Forest and frequently visits the forest to search for evidence of the Gurgach. So some people running the Facebook page called Cryptids Northern Ireland went on an unsuccessful expedition to the forest and claimed that one of them had seen one looking at him in the distance before he saw it, causing it to run off, they said in their Facebook post. This is what their Facebook post said: a huge breakthrough from our last expedition, our first sighting. We'll post the video taken just after the sighting in the comments, but I'll detail what I saw here. We'd been pretty unsuccessful, though we found one very cool footprint, and we were going to check the apple we had left previously. Before we went home, I had ran ahead to get away from the flies, but then I saw it in the distance, but I couldn't make out a rounded cone-shaped head covered in brown fur attached to a muscular body. Well, they could make that out. I couldn't see below chest level. It had a human-like face and it was looking towards me. When it turned and ran away, I ran towards it, but since my phone was dead, I had quickly borrowed another phone. But by the time I got there, it was gone through. By the time I got there, it was gone through. There were some footprints on the ground. See pictures. Not great English there on their Facebook post, but... yeah, so a lot of people say they see these Bigfoots. So here it is up on the screen now. This picture will be up on the Twitter page as well. And this is definitely, it's an interesting one. I think the twig they're referring to is right about here, that they're saying this could be an arm. It definitely looks like a ghillie suit, 100%. And I'm not sure, they're saying this could be a leg, but this... I don't think it is. I've zoomed in on it, and this part here is a big tree that's fallen down. It looks like it's just standing there, so I'd really only be taking this into account. And if I took that into account, I'd be saying it looks like a guy in a ghillie suit. But I don't know. It could be a lot of different things. Maybe just a hunter walking through, or maybe genuinely it's Bigfoot. Maybe it is a Gurgach in Northern Ireland. So we spoke about about Tipperary and the idea of a wolf man. Well, yes, these and there goes my dog barking again while I talk about the wolf man. Yes, her name is Ellie, and she likes to bark at this time of the day, because this time of the day is when all the school kids are walking past, and she just wants to play with them, but German Shepherd barking. It's not the most fun thing to want to go up and pat. The Tipperary Wolfman. In Tipperary and Ossory, there are legends of a werewolf-like creature. As opposed to the slightly more mainstream, though still very fringe, Irish hairy humanoids, the Gurgach and other wild men, as of February 2021, there have been only 2 modern sightings of the creature, and only one has any detail, time or date given. So in 2009... An anonymous person reported to UK Bigfoot researcher Deborah Hatswell. I'm going to try and contact Deborah, see if I can get her on the show. That they had saw what they had at one point called a haunted dog in the road between Newpoint and the Rear Cross in South Tipperary, the Republic of Ireland, late at night during the cold winter of 1999. The person who reported the sighting was driving home with their aunt and uncle and cousin when they saw an elderly man on the road. The streetlights were off for whatever reason. It was cold. They only saw him for a few seconds and only saw him because of their garden light was on. Since it was pitch black, when they drove past him, he disappeared, and when they looked back, they saw a huge dog with glowing red eyes. Nothing else came from the encounter, and nobody had seen the creature before or since except in the legends. And in one other sighting, another anonymous witness reported seeing similar creature at Ballymarkwood in a lane near a train station in 1913. The two 15-year-old boys said they had heard growling from behind a wall, so they looked over and only see a man with a bear's head. After attempting to talk to the creature, it rudely said, "Don't talk to me." Yeah, so it's definitely it's an interesting one. It's said to be wearing clothes. This is the strange part about it. This isn't like a could this be like a Dogman type Sasquatch creature? No, this seems to be a werewolf. This seems to be reported as a werewolf. They're wearing fine clothes. In legends, if we go back before the 1900s, people have seen him just sitting there on a stump in the forest wearing fine clothes. Not just clothes, like actual clothes that a nobleman would wear. And in many accounts, people would say that he would appear just to be a grumpy old man type character. He wouldn't be trying to chase after you and rip you apart. He would just be there, sitting there grumpy. Some people, in some legends, they suggested that he would actually try to make deals with them. So people have taken that idea and have thought that maybe a demon of some sort, a personification of the devil, maybe. It's interesting. It is definitely interesting as to what this thing is, and definitely seen more in ancient times or older times, in medieval times, over say now. But it's definitely a very interesting story, and one that we might go back and read up some more about and do possibly a whole show on Tipperary Wolfmen. But if we can find enough information, we will. So we're sort of getting towards the end now. Now, this next one is the Dobar Chew. So what is the Dobar Chew? Well, that's a terrifying picture that's up there. It's called a water dog or a water hound or king otter. It's a creature of Irish folklore. It resembles both dog and otter, though it sometimes is described as half dog, half fish. It lives in water and has fur with protective properties. So think fur that's like otter fur or beaver fur, but two front legs and no real reports of back legs, but it's a strange one. Physical description of the creature resembles an otter, but said to be about 5 times as large, so 10 to 15 feet. While white pelt, black ear tips, and a black cross on its back has been a few reports, and others is reported as brown. The Dobar Chew is an obsolete Irish word for otter. The modern Irish word for water is Usi, although Dobna is also rarely used. Dobbar is a much older form that cognates are found in both Celtic languages. Chew is hound. The Dobar Chew is also known as the Dobarku, and anglicised to the Duyaku or Duragu. So a headstone found in Conwell Cemetery in Glendale, County Leitrim, depicts the Dobar Chew and is related to a tale of an attack on a local woman by the creature. The stone is claimed to be the headstone of a grave of a woman killed by the Dobar Chew in the 17th century. The monument is a recumbent flag of sandstone about 6 feet 6 inches by 1 feet 10 inches. It shows a recumbent animal having body and legs like those of a dog, with the characteristic depth of rib and strength of thigh. The tail, long and curved, shows a definite tuft. The rear of the haunch and still more the tail are in exceptionally low relief, apparently due to the loss of a thin flake from the face of the slab. So far, the description is canine. The lettering and the carving are in relief. So her name was supposedly Grace McGuiglin. Her husband supposedly heard her scream as she was washing clothes down at the Glenade Low and came to her aid. When he got there, she was already dead, with the Dobar shoes upon her bloody and mutilated body. The man killed the Dobar shoe, stabbing it in the heart. As it died, it made a whistling noise, and its mate arose from the loft. Its mate chased the man, but after a long and bloody battle, he killed it as well. No reports on where that body ended up or what happened after that, but definitely, it's a weird one. Now, a few other things with this Dobar shoe is that people have said that they could be a fallback from a massive otter that existed back in the megafauna times, but then others have said that they have an intelligence and they can speak. So there's a lot of talk there about what these things could be. Are they cryptid or are they fae? Are they interdimensional, ultra dimensional? That's ultra dimensional. I am getting through some ultra dimensional books, and I'll be doing a big discussion on that hopefully very soon. But yeah, so a lot of people say that they do have an intelligence though, and there have been some reports of people saying that they have heard them speak as well. So I don't know. Could this be a similar story to the one in America with the weasel? Maybe. Who knows? So to summarize, to tail this out, we started with the fae creature with the leprechaun and the puka. Let's end out with this. So the Aoshi or Aoside, they are said to be to descend from fallen angels, or the Tuatha de Danann, meaning the tribe of Danu, depending on the Abrahamic or pagan tradition. The Aoside are said to live underground in fairy forts across the Western Sea, or in an invisible world that coexists with the world of humans. This world is described as the Labor Kabbalah Erin, as a parallel universe in which the Aoseed walk among the living. In the Irish language, Aoseed means people of the mounds, as the seed in Irish are hills or burial mounds. In modern Irish, the word sea, in Scottish Gaelic, sith, in Old Irish, side, and singular is sid. In modern Irish, the people of mounds are also called the Daoin side. In Scottish mythology, they are also the Daoin side. They are variously said to be the ancestors, the spirits of nature, or the goddesses and gods. Some authors, such as W.B. Yeats, refer to as Aoseed simply as the side. So in Gaelic folklore, which is what we're focusing on today, essentially they're the angelic bearers of the Fae law, really. The practice, the AOC are often appeased with offerings, and care is taken to avoid angering or insulting them. Often they are not named directly, but rather spoken to as the good neighbours, the fair folk, or simply the folk. The most common names for them are what we went through, the Aoseed and the Aoseed. The Aoseeth, I should say. So the people on the mounds, and a lot of people have... So this is where it comes into everything gets brought back to aliens. So a lot of people talk about them being of very Norse looking. So people say they look like the Norse aliens and extraterrestrials. And a lot of people say when they talk about the people of the mounds, that these mounds could potentially have been structures that were built underneath the mountains, underneath the hills, and were actually their ships, and they had built mounds above the ships to hide them. And essentially they'd come to Earth to sort of, some believe to escape a massive intergalactic war. Others say it's because they came here to study us. There's always different reasons, you know what it's like with the ufology groups. But definitely interesting. There's sort of the angelic riders, the angelic people of the Fae traditions within Gaelic beliefs. And this last one, I had to do this one because I found this one to be incredibly interesting. In Irish mythology, hungry grass, also known as fairy grass, is a cursed patch of grass. Anyone walking on it was doomed to perpetual and insatiable hunger and a permanent state of weakness. So this could be what we talked about earlier with these with those ghouls. So Harvey suggests that the hungry grass is cursed by the proximity of an unshriven corpse, so the Fiagota, or maybe a leprechaun. William Carleton's stories indeed suggested that the fairies plant the hungry grass. According to Harvey, this myth may relate to beliefs formed in the Irish potato famine of the 1840s, actually caused by fungi. In Margaret McDougall's letters, the phrase hungry grass is by an analogy to the myth used to describe hunger pains, and an alternative version of the hungry grass story relates to that anyone walking through it is struck by temporary hunger. To safely cross through, one must carry a bit of food to eat along the way, such as a sandwich or several crackers and some beer. Always got to have beer. I've got a beer right here next to me now. So it is quite an interesting thing. I think that there could be a little bit of that folklore that's been created around the famine. That's definitely something that. Yeah, I'm edging towards that a bit in regards to it, but it's appeared quite frequently along the history of the Irish folklore. So some have said that the Hungry Hill is where hungry grass has originated from, and some people, as in the picture that's on the YouTube page right now, have said it has a creature type form. It actually it lays down and can merge with the dirt, and if you step on the back of it, it actually has a physicality: legs, arms, teeth, that type of thing. The first person that ventured on the hill was never seen again. People were afraid to even go by the hill. Nevertheless, someone else eventually got up to the hill and lived. So a young fisherman that came to Ireland wanted to fish there, and the ocean was behind the Hungry Hill. So in the morning, the fisherman got to eat breakfast, so he thought he would eat it on the way to the ocean. He bought an apple and a sandwich for lunch. He got the apple out and started eating it. As he got to the hill, people started yelling not to go up the hill, but he didn't listen. As he was climbing, the grass on the hill wiggled almost like a snake and wrapped around him. He was still eating, and every time he took a bite, it would fall off him. When he got to shore, the other fisherman told him that the hill was said to kill people. He then put two and two together and came to the conclusion that if you ate while on the grass, you wouldn't fall in. The fairies are furious and desisted to plant hungry grass everywhere. Some people brought food with them everywhere they went. Others were skeptical and eventually fell to their doom. The famine had eventually stopped when people built a wall around Hungry Hill. If the wall was to ever fail, the hungry grass may come back again. Alrighty, so I hope you all enjoyed that grouping of stories and mythologies and tales and folklore from Ireland. Once again, thank you to my Irish listeners for getting me into that top 100. Really, really respect that. Really appreciate that. And it's great to hear that, India, Ireland. What else recently? We had Germany, Belgium, all these other places around the world where the podcast is really kicking off, and I'm like, this is amazing. I didn't even think it was going to become a thing in my own country, let alone everywhere else around the world. And in actual fact, I have more American listeners than I do Australian. I have more European listeners than I do Australian. So it's quite a very humbling thing to think that people are actually out there listening to me talk about this weird and wacky stuff from around the world. So anyway, we'll finish it up there. Make sure you check out the Twitter page and the Instagram page at Aussie Oddball. Also, the Facebook page and the TeePublic, if you want to buy something off the TeePublic, it's the Oddball Aussie podcast. Make sure you email me at theoddballaussie@hotmail.com all your stories. I really want to get those listener stories going again. And check out the YouTube page if you want to see all these pictures. And a few of the pictures will be on the Twitter page. So the YouTube page is the Oddball Aussie podcast. And and definitely check out the network Straight Up Strange Productions, where you'll find all of our great shows and all my friends from the network. All right, it's that time of the night again. You look after each other and stay safe out there in the weird. Good night.